A lot of great 80s sci-fi movies didn't work on release. In this video, we're only talking about 10 of them, so keep the list going in the comments. Enemy Mine didn't have an easy release. The budget ballooned to over $40 million, even though it was supposed to cost around $17. And, as usual, the marketing never really figured out how to sell it. The result was a box office flop, just over $12 million domestically. The plot is set in a future where humans are at war with an alien race. After a space battle, a human pilot and his alien enemy crash land on a hostile planet. Stranded together and unable to communicate, the two former enemies are forced to cooperate in order to survive. There's strong chemistry between Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr., along with some interesting creature effects. And while the story does stumble a bit toward the end, it keeps its emotional pull all the way through. By the way, a remake is now in development. It's being written by Terry Matalas, who worked on 12 Monkeys and the third season of Star Trek, Picard. So there's at least some cautious hope. We'll see how it turns out. The ideas behind the film are still relevant. Buckaroo Banzai is a polymath, a physicist, neurosurgeon, test pilot, and rock star who ends up saving the world from interdimensional aliens called the Red Lectroids from Planet 10. It's funny in a lot of places, packed with small details, and backed by a great cast. But back in 1984, critics didn't really understand it and called the film strange and unintelligible. Still, Buckaroo Banzai, which barely made back about half of its costs, didn't disappear. A loyal fan base kept it alive. The movie did much better on home video, and later expanded into comics, a novel, and even a video game. There were also plans for a TV series. Fox announced one in 1998, but it never happened. Videodrome follows Max Wren, the president of a small cable TV station who is constantly hunting for more extreme content. He stumbles onto a pirate broadcast that appears to show real torture and murder. Seeing it as the next step in sensational television, Max starts digging into its origins and quickly loses control of what's real and what isn't. David Cronenberg convinced Universal to finance and release the film off a one-page description. The studio gave it a wide theatrical push, opening it in hundreds of theaters. Almost immediately, they realized that was a mistake. The movie wasn't an easy sell, and even Cronenberg later admitted he wasn't sure how it was supposed to be marketed. So it didn't last long in theaters. And at the time, very few people realized how close the film was to predicting a future where extreme content is everywhere, instantly accessible, and sold purely as entertainment. Explorers is one of the best family sci-fi movies of the 1980s. It's confidently directed, features strong performances from a then-unknown cast, and tells a story that genuinely fires up a kid's imagination. Why it failed is still hard to pin down. It didn't collapse in some dramatic way. It just quietly faded out. Maybe it simply got lost next to bigger family hits of the era. The story follows three bullied kids who begin receiving strange signals through their dreams. Using that information, they build a homemade spaceship out of scrap parts and old computer tech, then set off to find the source of the transmissions. What they discover completely reshapes how they see the universe. It also holds up surprisingly well and hits with a strong sense of nostalgia, especially if you happen to catch it as a kid. Cherry 2000 is set in a future that feels like a strange mix of Brazil and Mad Max. The story follows a successful businessman whose android wife malfunctions beyond repair. So he heads out into the desert to find a replacement, teaming up with a tough tracker played by Melanie Griffith. Visually, the movie is a lot of fun. It's full of odd little details and memorable locations, including places like the Glory Hole Hotel. But Cherry 2000 went through multiple delays and had a very short theatrical run. The mix of genres, styles, and themes completely stumped its promoters. Thanks to later Blu-ray releases and retrospective screenings, Cherry 2000 is now far better known and much easier to appreciate on its own terms. Brainstorm stars Christopher Walken and comes from director Douglas Trumbull. Although Trumbull later distanced himself from Hollywood filmmaking altogether, it's actually a very strong and engaging watch. Trumbull clashed heavily with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and production was halted after the death of Natalie Wood, who drowned during a production break in November 1981. After that, the studio largely lost interest, which led to mixed reviews and a box office flop. That's a shame, because the core idea was far ahead of its time. Walken plays scientist Michael Brace, who together with his wife Karen, invents a device that can record human sensations and emotions and allow others to experience them. The film is at its strongest in the first half, focusing on the benefits and dangers of the technology, including recorded near-death experiences. Dune is a movie we covered recently when looking at failed sci-fi franchise starters, but leaving it out here would feel wrong. Written and directed by David Lynch, the film is definitely easier to follow if you're familiar with Frank Herbert's novel. Even so, many viewers still see it as one of the most baffling and fascinating blockbuster experiments ever made. The fact that Lynch was given a huge budget to create something so strange is part of what makes the film interesting in the first place. It's far from flawless, but Dune didn't deserve the sheer volume of hate it received in the 1980s. Over time, that very oddness helped it survive and earn one of the most loyal cult followings in sci-fi history. Now let's talk about two of the most influential films on this list. The first one is The Thing. Directed by John Carpenter, it's now considered one of the greatest sci-fi horror films ever made. And looking at it today, it's easy to wonder why it wasn't at least a modest box office hit. The Thing had everything going for it. It's a sci-fi horror spin on And Then There Were None, packed with cutting-edge practical effects. Carpenter was coming off a strong run with Halloween, The Fog, and Escape from New York, and he reunited with Kurt Russell in the lead role. So what went wrong? Timing. It came out in the summer of 1982, just 2 weeks after E.T., which completely dominated the season. Add in the bleak mood of the early 80s recession, and audiences weren't exactly lining up for a cold, nihilistic sci-fi horror film with a hopeless ending. But luckily, the story didn't end there. As we all know now, The Thing went on to become one of the most respected films in sci-fi horror history. Summer 1982 again, and this time it's Blade Runner, released on the exact same day as The Thing. Today, it's one of the most iconic sci-fi films ever made. At the time, though, Ridley Scott's film made about $42 million on a $30 million budget. But once all the costs and expectations were factored in, it was still seen as a commercial disappointment, and it felt like a one-off experiment. Its reputation grew slowly over the years. A big part of that came from Scott releasing new cuts of the film in 1992 and 2007, which reshaped how audiences saw it and helped turn Blade Runner into a genuine home video classic. That long-term cult status later convinced Warner Brothers that the property could support a blockbuster sequel. Blade Runner 2049 was given a massive $185 million budget. It was widely praised by critics, and many even consider it better than the original, yet it was still treated as a flop, finishing with around $270 million worldwide.